Hi guys, and welcome back to day 16 of Inktober, and today I am working on Canson XL watercolor paper like I have for a little while now, and honestly I'm really excited that I'm able to get more use out of this paper. I've had this, it's actually a really big size pad of paper that's been just sitting there for well over a year where I've almost never touched it because I have paper that I prefer for when I'm doing actual watercolor pieces and I'm putting more time into it. So I usually don't end up going with this paper, but now that I'm doing a lot of these ink wash pictures, I'm reaching for it a lot more, and it's just a really good feeling to be able to get more use out of the stuff that I have just sitting there and just not getting used. I don't like that feeling of having art supplies that's not being used in the way that it needs to be. So it's been really actually kind of fun to be able to go through this paper and feel like I'm actually turning it into something. I'm turning it into art and taking what was just being a little bit of a waste of space and making it something that's not so much a waste of space. Basically, I'm glad that I'm being able to use more of what I have already here, but it's a really good paper. It's a really low cost, so that's nice. I definitely do like being able to have supplies like this where I can not be worried about really messing it up. And actually, for this one today, this is actually the third iteration of Inktober, so I've gone through 3 of these little watercolor sheets already where they were just they didn't quite turn out the way that I wanted it to. So it was nice to not feel like I was wasting this nice paper and like it was this horrible event to have to move on and start over, where when the media itself was actually really cheap, it allowed me to be able to break free from that and move on and create something that was even better. And today I'm using the Micron pens, and I really wanted to get something that was a lot more of a sketchier quality for these, which I've been noticing that I much prefer when I'm working on watercolor paper, because when I'm trying to get really sharp, clean line work on watercolor paper, it is so much more of a strain on my hand where I have to really push it to get it into the grooves of the paper. And it's really tiring. So I like to kind of do a much more softer, subdued kind of a sketchy texture for the line work when I'm working on watercolor paper. It's much more of a pleasant experience than one that I feel like I'm fighting against the mediums for. But it's just a really, really pleasant to be able to try to actually get that sketchy quality when I'm working on watercolor paper, because the watercolor paper is already very textured. I'm just letting it behave. I'm letting the pen behave how it wants to on top of the paper, and it's gliding across it, and it's just kind of skipping. And it was just really fun to work on this one. I usually end up going over the line a couple of times so that it ends up being a line that's built up of several thinner, sketchier lines, but then it builds up to be one more robust, thicker line. And I've been trying to incorporate breaking the lines a little bit with not just this one, but other Inktober's, since I'm really used to doing things that are really very well defined. Everything is very sharply contained in that area, and it has very specific line work. And I've been wanting to be able to reach a point where I can let things breathe a little bit more and not be so narrowly specific. Some of the areas that I'd like to show that in more is like hair, because there's some ways that hair looks that it's just really soft and free flowing, and it doesn't really have these very specific lines or strokes that I can use to define it. So I'd like to be able to get a little bit better at kind of signifying a shape and the textures through these looser, more broken up line marks than feeling like I have to have it very specifically worked out. And I tried that specifically near the top of his hood, and I always love using details like that in the line work because I wanted it to be much thinner at the top areas of where I would imagine the light was coming in and hitting it, and then I could do much darker areas below areas that are blocking the light, so where the shadow would be, and just lower areas in the piece. And that just really gives it this very slight subliminal kind of idea of where the light's coming from, and it just reinforces all of that, so it all comes together and has more of that look that it's just much more cohesive when I'm able to show the direction within the line work itself and not just with the values that I'm putting in with the ink washes. And I think that this was probably my favorite one to put the ink washes on so far. I just felt like it was really flowing for me for this one, and building up the ink wash in the way that I wanted to was really working. So that was really exciting. It was really fun to be able to put down this kind of textured ink wash and then to go back in with a darker one to redefine some of the areas of his hood. And I feel like I'm starting to kind of get the hang of ink washes. I was actually kind of surprised at how it seems to behave a little bit differently than watercolor. I feel pretty good about when I go in with watercolor how to get a nice smooth wash of just solid color. I have that pretty okay down, but when I came to the actual ink washes, I noticed the areas where normally I'd be able to go back in and make sure that it was smoothed out quick enough with the watercolor. When I was doing that with the ink washes, sometimes it would actually disturb it, and then once it dried you could see those areas that I had gone in and messed with it a little bit, which you can do with watercolor. If you're really quick and it's still very wet, you can do that. So there's a few very slight differences in the way that the actual ink washes behaved, and I'm starting to learn how to treat it so that I can get the effects that I want, and I can get it to be more textured and splotchier in areas that I want it to be, and it can be controlled, and other areas where I want it to be smoother, I'm starting to figure out the control that I need for that. And this is obviously my favorite part to work on. I love adding these little embellishments. There's just some pieces that when I look at it all along, I knew that I wanted to add that element, but once I got to the point where it's time to put it in, I know it's just not complete until I put it in there. And I'm trying to be more not judgmental, more picky or more decisive about what elements like this that I'm putting in my pieces. And I think that might be a good telltale sign, is that when I'm looking at it, it doesn't feel complete without it. Whereas some pieces, where the ones where I've gone way too overboard, I tend to think, that might look good there, and then I put it down and I regret it. So I think that it's just when I look at it and I realize that it's just not complete without that, then it's time to put it in there. And if I'm just thinking, I wonder if it might make it better, it's probably something that I should leave off. I don't know. It's one of those things where I want to learn what is too much so that I can go far enough. I don't want everything to be so subdued and not pushed far enough. So it's kind of a balancing game between finding where elements are too chaotic and too much. Anyways, the point is that I actually was really happy with this one. I was really excited to put it down. And the ink that I'm using, I'm really happy with how opaque it is, because I was able to go over the ink wash and still get a very bright gold. It wasn't translucent at all, so it's not like you could see the ink wash below it. It was really sharp and crisp, and I was able to get that look that I wanted. And I did do kind of something similar to this on one of the earlier pieces that I didn't end up really pursuing or using, where I did kind of a leaf effect like this. So I felt really good about just diving in and putting that down on this piece, because I had just done one where I had practiced it out, and it just feels so pleasant to just do these really fine little brush strokes to get that gold ink down there. It's just, some parts of creating these pieces are just so exciting, and it just feels so tactically good when I'm putting it down and working with this gold ink. It just feels really good. But the brushes that I'm using, they're actually really, really cheap. I think they were just like $1. I got a pack of 4, so I think it was like $1 per brush, and it was at Michael's. And I'm kind of gravitating more towards brushes like that. I mean, I have like one good round brush that I use all the time, and I make sure that I'm rinsing it out and I'm keeping it really clean and taken care of. But there are a lot of brushes that just, as I'm using them, they get worn down, or I forget to wash out whatever it was that I was using, and it kind of gunks it up. So I kind of like being able to just use brushes that are really very affordable and not expensive, so it's not heartbreaking when it wears down, and it's something that I can get the use out of it until it's no longer able to keep a point, and then I can move on to the next brush. And I'm really liking that for the ink work, because I find that these are nice and very sharp, whereas the nicer, more high quality ones that I get, they still start fraying over time, but I spent a lot more on them than $1, so it's nice to be able to just have $1 brush that I can use till it's done and then move on to the next one. But that is the end of today's Inktober. I feel good about the outcome of this, and that's always the best feeling for Inktober, is when I feel like I'm excited for the next day to work on it. But as usual, the original of this one is available in my shop right now, so all with his golden ink and everything, which I really love golden ink. I can't get enough of it, but I do have a link right below me so you can check out him, and I think that I have a couple of the Inktober originals left, so not a ton, but you'll be able to see the ones that are still available on my shop, as well as all the other prints that I have. So yeah, like I said, a link right below me. You can check out my shop, and if you haven't yet, I would love if you wanted to subscribe and you can see more of my videos. But I will see you tomorrow with my next Inktober, and yeah, thank you so much for watching.